Imagine a world where your pickup truck runs on a jet engine, your sedan has a helicopter motor in the trunk, and Chrysler builds a supercar faster than a Ferrari. These aren't sci-fi fantasies, they were real American machines that actually existed until they were mysteriously canceled. Today, we are digging into the X-files of the automotive industry. We've got conspiracy theories, corporate jealousy, and engineering madness. Stick around because the last car on this list was so fast it was allegedly killed by its own parent company out of pure fear. Which one is your favorite what if? Let me know in the comments below and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next ride. The Tucker 48 is perhaps the most famous murder mystery in automotive history. Conceived by Preston Tucker in the late 1940s, this wasn't just a car, it was a revolution on wheels explicitly designed to challenge the stagnation of Detroit's Big Three. Dubbed the car of tomorrow, it prioritized safety and aerodynamics in a way no one had seen before. The vehicle featured a perimeter frame for crash protection, a padded dashboard, and a pop-out windshield designed to eject during a collision to protect passengers. It was low, sleek, and had a drag coefficient of just 0.27, making it incredibly efficient for its massive size. Tucker wasn't just building a car, he was trying to build the future of American transportation. Mechanically, the Tucker 48 was pure insanity. It was powered by a rear-mounted Franklin 0335 engine, a flat-six power plant originally designed for Bell helicopters. Tucker's engineers converted it to water cooling, allowing it to sustain high speeds for hours. This engine produced 166 horsepower and 372 lb-ft of torque, giving it a top speed of 120 mph, blistering stats for 1948. But the most iconic feature was the Cyclops Eye, a third headlight mounted in the center of the grille that swiveled with the steering wheel by more than 10 degrees. This allowed drivers to see around corners before turning, a safety feature that wouldn't become a standard industry option for decades. However, the Tucker 48 was too good, too soon. The establishment viewed Tucker as a threat. A massive investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, heavily fueled by rumors and political pressure from competitors, crushed the company. They claimed the car was a fraud, a tin goose that couldn't run, even though tests proved it was superior to any Ford or GM car of the era. Tucker was eventually acquitted of all fraud charges in court, but the bad press destroyed his funding. The factory was seized, and the dream died. Only 51 of these masterpieces were ever completed. Today, they are worth millions, standing as a painful reminder of how corporate warfare can kill innovation. If the 1950s had a spirit animal, it was the jet engine. General Motors decided to see if they could put that power on the road with the Firebird series. These weren't just cars styled to look like planes, they were literally powered by gas turbine engines. The Firebird Y, introduced in 1953, was essentially a fighter jet on 4 wheels. It was a single-seater strictly for testing, designed by the legendary Harley Earl. It looked like a missile, complete with wings and a bubble canopy. It produced 370 horsepower, but it was terrifyingly unstable at high speeds and had no brakes on the wheels. It relied on air flaps and engine braking to slow down. The experiment evolved with the Firebird 2 in 1956, a 4-seater family car made of titanium, but the peak of this madness was the Firebird III in 1958. This is widely considered one of the most exotic concepts ever built. It featured a futuristic double-bubble canopy and no fewer than 7 distinct wings and fins. Inside, the traditional controls were gone. It featured no-hold steering. A joystick positioned between the 2 passengers controlled the steering, acceleration, and braking. It was fully automated, designed for a theoretical electronic highway of the future where cars would drive themselves. It was the ultimate expression of space-age optimism. So why don't we drive them today? Physics and practicality. The gas turbine engines operated at incredibly high temperatures. Exhaust gases reached nearly 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, literally melting the asphalt behind the car at stoplights or scorching the paint of the car behind you. They were incredibly loud, sounding like a Boeing 747 taking off in your driveway. Furthermore, they guzzled jet fuel and had terrible throttle lag. When you pressed the gas, it took seconds for the turbine to spin up. GM realized that while jet engines are great for the sky, they are a disaster for the McDonald's drive-thru. In the mid-1960s, Ford looked at the trucking industry and said, "Let's make it supersonic." Enter Big Red, a gigantic experimental gas turbine semi-truck that debuted at the 1964 World's Fair. This wasn't just a static concept. It was a fully functional beast designed to haul massive loads across the new interstate highway system at high speeds for hours on end without stopping. Standing 13 feet tall and stretching nearly 100 feet long with its twin trailers, Big Red was an imposing sight. The cab sat high above the road, and the driver accessed the cockpit by flipping a switch that lowered a retractable ladder. Inside, Big Red was more like a luxury RV than a truck. Designed for long-haul teams who would practically live on the road, it featured a mini kitchen with a refrigerator, an incinerating toilet, and a television for the co-driver. It was powered by a massive 600-horsepower Ford 705 gas turbine engine. This engine was remarkably complex, utilizing a recuperator to reuse exhaust heat, making it surprisingly efficient at highway cruising speeds. Ford sent Big Red on a massive cross-country promotional tour, proving that a turbine truck could be quiet, smooth, and require way less maintenance than a vibrating diesel engine. However, the project was scrapped due to the same issues that killed turbine cars: horrible fuel efficiency in stop-and-go traffic and extremely high manufacturing costs. But the story gets weirder. After the project was canceled, Big Red disappeared. For nearly 40 years, no one knew where this massive truck went. Most assumed it was crushed. Amazingly, it was rediscovered recently in the hands of a private collector who had bought it from the Holman Moody racing team. It has been restored to its former glory, proving that the jet-age Semi was real, even if it never transformed the logistics industry as Ford hoped. Not to be outdone by Ford's Big Red, Chevrolet launched their own counterattack, the Turbo Titan III. Introduced in 1965, this was GM's vision of the heavy-duty future. While Ford focused on size, Chevy focused on style and aerodynamics. The design was absolutely stunning, featuring a fiberglass cab and a space-age chassis that looked more like a NASA shuttle than a garbage truck. It had functional gull-wing windows that opened upward and powered retractable headlights hidden behind sleek panels. It was lower, meaner, and arguably much cooler than its Ford rival. Inside, the Turbo Titan III was even crazier. There was no steering wheel. Instead, the driver used dial steering, two small dials mounted on a padded console in front of the driver. You simply rotated the dials to turn the wheels, a system GM called twin-dial steering. Like its Ford rival, the Turbo Titan III fell victim to government regulations. The Clean Air Act was on the horizon in the late 60s, and turbines produced high levels of nitrogen oxides which were hard to filter out. Furthermore, the fuel crisis of the 1970s was approaching, and a thirsty turbine engine became a financial liability for trucking companies operating on thin margins. The project was canceled, and the Turbo Titan III was reportedly destroyed by GM, leaving only photos and promotional films of its incredible dial steering system behind. It remains a ghost of a future that almost happened. You might know this vehicle better as a Hot Wheels toy, but the Dodge Deora was a real functioning concept that stunned the world at the 1967 Detroit Autorama. Based on the humble Dodge A100 compact pickup, the Deora was a radical custom design created by the Alexander brothers. It featured a cab-forward layout where the driver sat well ahead of the front wheels, giving it a look that was part spaceship, part surfboard hauler. It looked sleek, low, and incredibly cool, capturing the California surf culture perfectly with its gold paint and integrated surfboard mounts. The most bizarre feature of the Deora was the entry system. It had no side doors, none. To get inside, the entire front windshield and nose of the truck swung open like a hatch on a spacecraft. The lower section swiveled out and the glass lifted up. The driver had to climb in through the front, over the bumper. To make this possible, the steering wheel was mounted on a swing-away arm that moved aside to let the driver pass. The engine, a standard 170 cubic inch slant 6, was moved to the rear bed area and covered by a hard tonneau cover to distribute weight. While Chrysler loved the attention the Deora generated and actually leased the vehicle to tour dealerships, it was never practical for mass production. The safety implications of entering through the windshield and the total lack of crash protection for the driver's legs made it impossible to sell legally. Imagine a head-on collision where your knees are the bumper. It lived on as one of the original Sweet 16 Hot Wheels cars released in 1968, becoming a legend in toy boxes everywhere. Ironically, more people own the toy version than almost any real truck Dodge ever built. When you think of AMC, American Motors Corporation, you usually think of the quirky gremlin or the fishbowl-like pacer. You definitely don't think of a sleek, mid-engine supercar that could hunt down Ferraris. That's exactly what the AMX3 was. In the late 60s, AMC desperately wanted to shed its economy car image. They launched Project 3 with a bold goal: build a world-class sports car. They teamed up with Italian engineer Giotto Bizzarini, the man who helped create the Ferrari 250 GTO, to design the chassis and suspension. This was a serious machine with Italian DNA and American muscle. The AMX3 was breathtaking. It stood only 43 inches tall and featured a mid-mounted AMC 390 cubic inch V8 engine producing 340 horsepower. Getting that power to the wheels required a custom 4-speed transaxle specially developed by OTO Melara in Italy. The car was tested at the Monza track where it reportedly hit speeds of 170 mph, faster than almost anything Detroit was producing at the time. It was stiff, fast, and gorgeous. AMC planned to build about 5,000 of them a year to rival the De Tomaso Pantera and the Ford GT40, positioning themselves as a legitimate performance brand. Tragically, simple economics killed the beast. As the project neared completion in 1970, impending U.S. bumper regulations, the 5 mph bumper rule, meant a costly redesign of the car's beautiful nose and tail. Furthermore, the final estimated price tag was rising to nearly $12,000, massive money in 1970, costing more than a comparable Ferrari. AMC, always strapped for cash and realizing they would lose money on every unit sold, pulled the plug. Only 6 prototypes were ever built. It remains the greatest American supercar that never was, a what-if that could have saved AMC's reputation. Jeep trucks like the Gladiator, the original J-Series, are icons of rugged Americana. However, deep in the archives of Jeep history lies a solution that never made it: the J10 Extended Cab prototype built in 1977. This wasn't a custom garage job, this was a factory prototype. The prototype featured a stretched cabin with a distinct small window behind the driver's door, offering roughly 18 inches of extra storage space behind the seats. It addressed the biggest complaint of J-truck owners: legroom and interior storage. It used the standard 119-inch wheelbase but shortened the bed slightly to accommodate the longer cab. It was a brilliant move that anticipated the extended cab craze that would dominate the truck market in the 1980s and 90s. Jeep had the foresight to see that trucks were becoming lifestyle vehicles, not just farm equipment. So why didn't they build it? The blame falls on AMC's financial chaos. By 1977, AMC, who owned Jeep, was struggling to stay afloat. Investing in new body stampings and tooling for a niche truck variant was deemed too expensive and risky. The executives decided to save money and stick with the existing single-cab tooling. It was a massive missed opportunity. Jeep trucks slowly lost market share to Ford and Chevy, and the J-Series was eventually discontinued. We wouldn't see a true factory Jeep pickup with room for passengers again until the modern Gladiator arrived decades later. The DeLorean DMC 12 is technically the only car on this list that reached production, but its cancellation is the most dramatic story in automotive history. John DeLorean, a brilliant GM executive who created the Pontiac GTO, left the corporate world to build his dream car. He wanted an ethical sports car, safe, long-lasting, and fuel-efficient. The result was the DMC 12, featuring a fiberglass chassis designed by Lotus, iconic gull-wing doors, and a brushed stainless steel body that required no paint and would never rust. It was meant to be the car of the future, priced at $12,000. However, the dream quickly turned into a nightmare. The factory was built in Dunmurry, Northern Ireland, amidst violent political conflict, leading to quality control issues. The car was also severely underpowered. Originally planned to have a powerful Citroën rotary engine, it ended up with a sluggish 130-horsepower Peugeot-Renault Volvo V6. It did 0-60 mph in nearly 10 seconds, slower than a minivan today. By 1982, the company was bleeding cash. Unsold cars were piling up at dealerships, and the British government was threatening to cut off funding. John DeLorean needed $17 million immediately to save his company. In a desperate attempt to get that money, John DeLorean was caught on tape in an FBI sting operation involving 220 lbs of cocaine. Although he was later acquitted of all charges in court because it was proven to be FBI entrapment, the scandal destroyed the company instantly. The factory closed, 2,500 jobs were lost, and the remaining parts were sold off. The car became a joke until the movie Back to the Future turned it into a legend 3 years later. It's the ultimate example of a car that died in shame only to be resurrected by pop culture, leaving us to wonder what a Mark II DeLorean might have been. Flashback to 2001. The muscle truck era was in full swing with the Ford SVT Lightning dominating the streets, but Ford wanted to push the envelope further with the lightning rod concept. This wasn't designed to be a work truck, it was a hot rod tribute. The designers took a standard F-150 and chopped the roofline by 1 inch, giving it a lower, more aggressive stance. They raked the windshield back for better aerodynamics and hid the windshield wipers to keep the lines clean. The coolest and arguably weirdest detail was the tires. Ford partnered with Goodyear to create custom 23-inch tires that had a Maori tribal tattoo tread pattern carved directly into the rubber. This same tribal pattern was laser-etched into the leather seats and the aluminum truck bed tonneau cover. Under the hood, it kept the potent 5.4L supercharged Triton V8 from the standard Lightning, pumping out 380 horsepower and 450 lb-ft of torque. It was a perfect blend of early 2000s tuner culture and classic 1950s chopping techniques. We saved the most painful one for last. In 2004, Chrysler shocked the automotive world at the Detroit Auto Show. They unveiled the ME Four-12. The name stood for mid-engine 4-turbo 12-cylinder. This wasn't a plastic mock-up. It was a fully functional hypercar intended to redefine the brand. Built on a carbon fiber and aluminum honeycomb chassis, it was incredibly light, weighing just 2,180 lbs. It looked like a stealth fighter mixed with a luxury sedan. Chrysler, usually known for minivans and sedans, had suddenly built a car that could embarrass a Ferrari Enzo. The specs were terrifying. It used a quad-turbocharged V12 engine sourced from AMG, producing 850 horsepower and 850 lb-ft of torque. It smashed 0-60 mph in just 2.9 seconds and had a projected top speed of 248 mph. It covered the quarter mile in 10.6 seconds. These numbers are impressive today. In 2004, they were alien technology. Journalists drove the prototype and confirmed it was real, refined, and terrifyingly fast. It was ready for production. Chrysler executives were excited. The American public was ready to buy it. So, what happened? Politics. At the time, Chrysler was owned by Daimler, Mercedes-Benz. Rumor has it that the German executives at Mercedes were furious. They had just spent millions developing their own supercar, the Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren. The idea that their lower-tier American brand Chrysler had built a car that was faster, lighter, and arguably better engineering than their flagship Mercedes was unacceptable. The project was abruptly canceled. The ME412 didn't die because it failed. It died because it was too good. It remains the greatest tragedy in modern American car history. From the conspiracy that killed the Tucker 48 to the corporate ego that crushed the Chrysler ME412, these vehicles prove that being the best isn't always enough to survive in the auto industry. We lost amazing technology to regulations, budget cuts, and internal politics. Which of these canceled legends would you buy today if you could? I'd personally take the Chrysler. Let me know your pick in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more hidden history. Thanks for watching and drive safe.